This is a bonus episode of Making Sunday Happen, Hybrid Worship Experiences with Altar Live. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey guys, welcome to this bonus episode of Making Sunday Happen. Today I'll be talking with the team at Altar Live. That's Stephanie, Antonucci, Leathe, and Andy Mahon. Altar is a brand new service created this year through the pandemic that allows you to merge physical and digital worship experiences together. I talked with Stephanie and Andy all about it. We walked through features of the service, what you can do with it, and how it can help your church. I want you to be informed of the tools out there to help you transform your worship experience. That's why we have guys on like Kyle Cutter from Life Church to chat about Church Online Platform, or Kevin Hurdle from Outreach to talk about freeonlinechurch.com, or Nate Anderson from Resi, and others. We want you to know what's out there and how to use these tools for your church. But this episode is all about Altar Live. My interview with Stephanie and Andy is coming right up after this. Here we go.
Introducing monthly custom media plans from 1230 Media. Affordable, no-contract monthly plans for custom graphic design and video for your church. Custom sermon series designs, announcement graphics, social media graphics, sermon bumpers and trailers, promotional videos, countdowns, church announcement videos, and more. Choose between custom graphics, custom video, or graphics and video plans. Harness the power of a full creative team every month to serve your church or ministry, with plans starting at only $600 per month. Join hundreds of churches using 1230 Media to transform your worship experience. Get started today at 1230.media/pricing. That's 1230.media/pricing.
Hey guys, today I welcome my friends from Altar Live. I hope I get their names right. Here we go. Stephanie, Antonucci, Leith. I was close.
You're close.
All right. And Andy Mahon.
Mm-hmm.
So Stephanie and Andy. That's just, I'm just going first names, guys. Okay.
Super.
We'll go with Carl.
All right, good. All right, so I met you guys a few months ago. You guys have launched a brand new platform called Altar Live, and we've gotten to know each other well. I'm really excited about this platform because it brings hybrid worship together, both physical and digital. And we're going to talk about all of that today and how Altar Live can help folks in their worship experience and what you guys are seeing out there in church world right now. So I'd love to start with that. You guys just introducing yourselves and tell me what Altar Live is all about, and just kind of get us started. Stephanie, you want to start us off?
Yeah, well, thank you, Carl, for having us. We're glad to be here today. And likewise, it's been really nice to get to know you over the last few months. As we navigate this disruption COVID has caused in the church world. So Andy and myself are both entrepreneurs. My background is in both higher education and entrepreneurship, as well as consulting. And back in April, we really started seeing a trend in churches, really out of curiosity, looking at how faith communities were reacting to what every other industry and people group was doing, which is having to go online. And churches are not traditionally known as early tech adopters. So the transition ranged from great creativity to painful to everything in between. So myself and the rest of our team who's not on this call, who are the software engineers who work with us, started, just speculating and asking questions. What is this experience like for churches? The number one thing we started to hear was that churches can get online. There's live stream has existed for a while, and things like Zoom have been alive and well for the last 8 years. But live stream is a one-way broadcast. Churches are about two-way relationship. And there started to appear this great gap between the ability to just give content and then the ability to have relationship and community online. So we saw that, this gap widening. And so in June, we started writing our first lines of code, designing a platform that could really bring together the best of in-person interaction and online live stream onto the same platform to create a seamless experience. So Altar Live is exactly that. We are designing to bring human interaction back into online worship. We really see incredible benefit to what online worship has been able to do and doors it has figuratively opened for people in the world who may not have been able to participate in church communities before, as well as keep communities together despite not being able to meet physically. And beyond that, the ability, seeing this as an opportunity for churches to use what they've invested this time and resources into for long-term sustaining online ministry. So our platform does that, a seamless integration between both the live stream, but also the human-to-human interaction.
So let me ask you this. You and we talked a couple of months ago about the platform, and I want to get into some of the specifics. So from a practical standpoint, we're talking if I'm in a physical worship experience, I can bring in a Zoom call. I can bring in people from the digital environment. And vice versa, right? I can be in the digital and see what's going on in the live and that. So kind of walk me through a little bit of how the platform works.
Yeah, I'll paint you a picture. So you have two scenarios. You have one in which you have an online community that is gathering online primarily. And then another scenario where you have some both in person and online. And we have churches across the spectrum across the world. The online and physical combination is a challenge for a lot of churches because once you do begin to gather in person, which is great, you have the challenge of now this community that you feel like you're leaving behind online. Right. So our platform allows you to bring in people from home into the service and vice versa, so that you can create an experience where people feel like they can have an active part even if they're not able to be in the building. The second part of that, though, that we've really started seeing is once a church has been live streaming, there's an engagement gap that has begun to happen, which is live stream on the online side lacks a certain human to human interaction piece. So the second piece of our platform is really for churches that have invested a lot into live stream and are doing a great job at it. Our platform really wraps around all of that to allow people to do watch parties, to do mix and mingle coffee hour afterwards, where you can go choose somebody to talk to, enter breakout rooms together, leave breakout rooms. You can have virtual classrooms, and you can really have all the stuff that happens in the 15 minutes before and after the service on the platform together.
Yeah.
There's a story we tell a lot. Pastor was talking to us. So they live stream, and there's a couple people in their congregation that are in an elder care facility. And when COVID hit, of course, the elder care facilities, they closed all their doors, all the inside doors as well. Like everybody had to just stay in their room. So there's one woman she was usually in community with another friend of hers just down the hall. They actually didn't see each other much of the week. But they also didn't see each other during the live stream. They were both attending, but they didn't really see each other. So that church, like a lot of churches, had a Zoom pre-church for half an hour and then a coffee hour afterwards. And they would get on that, and that's how they would catch up. And the rest of the church was getting on the Zoom as well. They're like, oh, remember those two ladies? We haven't seen them in, a couple of years. And those who live, they're very chatty and they're very charming. They're talking about their grandkids. They're very funny. And everyone in the church started enjoying their presence. And so it wasn't just a blessing for them. Like now they could be together. But the rest of the church was blessed by them. Like, these are people who were part of our community, but haven't been a vibrant, integral part. So that's the goal that we have is how do you bring these things together? How do you deliver the content and keep the interactivity amongst the congregation?
So, Andy, let's kind of zoom back out a little bit and talk about maybe the future of where you guys think church is going. Obviously, if a church did not have an online presence before COVID and now they do, for them to go back and not have an online presence is not an option. They really need to do both. Do you agree with that? And do you think how do you think online church is here to stay?
So, well, of course we agree because we've built the whole company around that prospect. So in addition to people who are, out because they have to be out, so they might be frail or vulnerable to the virus. At some point, the virus goes away. So can they come back in the church? Sure. But there's a lot of people who, for whatever, they prefer it. Maybe just because it's convenient. Maybe they have rambunctious kids. Maybe they're an introvert and kind of like that, or maybe they're a newcomer, and actually stepping across that threshold is a big step. So there's always going to be a part there. When we talk to pastors, they kind of have two concerns. Depends on which one's top for each one. One is, how do I keep the people that we've got? Right? We don't want to lose them. There's some statistics that show people who are regular churchgoers but have not been to church in the last month, even online. That's distressing. Right? And then there's others who are, more growth oriented, like, well, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to reach the unchurched or people who have fallen away from church and bring them back. And so what do we do? And so we feel strongly that both of those communities come to the online for the service, right? For the sermon, for the worship, but it's just not keeping them there. And so we believe that, content, people come for the content, but they stay for the people. And if there's a way to connect them, that then will make hybrid, some in the church and some online. That's going to make that thrive, we think. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point that, at some point the virus is going to go away. And so I don't think you guys are. And I think that the model is still there for taking hybrid church into the future and almost becoming a normal. Stephanie, do you have any thoughts on that? How maybe hybrid is where we're going?
We never disagree, by the way.
Yeah, I'll echo what Andy said. The reality is online live stream, even before COVID, was always a one-way broadcast. People would use the live stream to catch up on a sermon that they missed, or share it to a friend, or some people, that was the way that they would experience church. They really would come to the church building, rarely, but they felt like they were a part of a church because they were watching the church. But from a church's perspective, that means then engagement just boils down to likes, views, shares, and comments. Both what Andy's saying for, beyond this, it's an opportunity from what we've learned during this COVID period of how we actually move beyond one-way broadcast into having dynamic online experiences.
Interaction.
That human interaction piece is critical, both for, churches who as a community are worried about, how are people feeling connected and are they connected, but also for newcomers. Why does anyone go to church for the first time? Certainly because there's messages of truth there that they, in a relationship with Jesus that brings them in, but they stay because there's relationship. And that's what I think online, we have the opportunity now post-COVID to bring into our online platforms, even beyond this season.
So, Andy, let's get really practical. If I'm going to accept as a church this new reality of hybrid, what are some of the things that I need as a church? How can I prepare for moving there if I'm not there yet, or taking steps to make sure that I'm set up for hybrid?
Well, I'm going to presume that they're already online. If they're not online, there's so much to catch up on. Mm-hmm. And really, it is, well, take what you've already got. That's probably, don't try to reinvent it. Take what you've already got, right? You've given some great advice, Carl, on where to set up cameras. Get different camera angles. Kind of train the pastor to preach to the red dot. a little bit,
Right.
some of those things. Those are nice practical things, and then we could probably list off another half dozen among the three of us. Another one, though, is training your staff and the volunteers, right? So it can't all fall on the pastor's shoulders or even on the pastoral staff, depending on how big the church is. Like, there's 4 or 5 people who are kind of running everything. I mean, most churches have some sort of 80-20 anyway. At least get the 20. Get the 20% who love to volunteer. The welcome team's not doing anything anymore at the church, but they're probably pretty good online of engaging with people and looking for who's new and things like that. Can I introduce you to, if you're new, learn a few things about you. Like, oh, maybe I can introduce you to someone who sounds like they might have some commonality. Those kinds of things. So, getting other people to shoulder some of that. And they know, there's probably a whole bunch of new people. I shouldn't say new to the church. There's a whole bunch of people who are really good at online who were not, I would say they were not good at church. So in my church, actually, there's a woman who, she's an introvert. She's not shy. She's a, faithful believer for many, many years, single mom, very powerful woman. She's an introvert. She doesn't go to the coffee hour afterwards, right? So her name is people don't really know her. Oh my gosh, she's online. She's chatting up in the sidebar chat on YouTube all the time, and she has become so well known. She now has been named an elder at our church, right? And so, longtime churchgoer. So there are other people in your church who probably, like, their light can shine in an online way. So part of it is see who's in that chat, like see who's doing that, and go like, there's a new person, or that's someone who we haven't seen as volunteering, being part of that 80-20 mix before. Yeah. Let's see if we can bring them into it a little bit more. So that's kind of a fun. I think for a pastor, that can actually be a very fun thing. Because starting to really leverage more of the community.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Carl, too, there's certainly the as Andy's saying, how do you look within your own community on how people are going to help make this more than just the responsibility of the pastor to create content, but to actually build life online in your community. The second, and then practically on the technology side, there is the technology you choose is very important. And we obviously have a bias because we work in this space of technology, but the technology you choose will shape the way that you do church and in the environment that you do create online, which is why we feel so passionate that churches are lacking good options to go beyond the one-way broadcast, that they need options to go deeper. And some churches do their full service on Zoom, which is great. We talk to a lot of those churches too who have chosen that option. And there's obviously limitations with Zoom because it was built for business conferencing. And at scale, it gets a bit more difficult. But, at the broad level, I would say, think about your technology. Think about how, are you choosing platforms that are going to only promote one-way broadcast? Or are you choosing, I think there are going to be more and more platforms like ours that really allow you to do that two-way interaction, and think intentionally about how you're going to invest in those resources. That's
a good point. Why do you think, or give me some reasons why it's important to budget? If, a lot of churches' budgets turn over either in August or January, something like that. Why is it important to budget this coming year, knowing that I'm going to spend more on technology and equipment to execute a hybrid situation? You have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say the first thought is, I think what churches have felt and we were actually just at church yesterday talking with them about this, they've had this whiplash back and forth of like, okay, we're doing pre-recorded, now we're doing live, now we're outside, now we're inside, but we're in a different building that we can be more spread out on. Now we're back inside, and now maybe, we have more restrictions coming. So, you've had to go through so many different models. The investment in resources really up front gives you then the ability to not have to react week by week, but you can actually plan ahead, over 6 months, develop, options and models that are going to last you despite whatever option, whether you have to be all online or all in person or some of both or inside, outside. budging it early allows you to actually really think through how you're gonna, gives you peace of mind. You don't have to keep flip-flopping back and forth.
Andy, do you want to speak any more to community over content? Is it more important to lean toward technology and situations and building your experience based on more on community or based more on content? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll try not to put them in opposition. I think they're two hands clapping.
Yes.
So what I see to be very successul is, we have this phrase that we say, it's okay to talk in church now, right? We talked to this one pastor, and we showed him our product. He goes, why would I want people to be talking while I'm preaching? He wasn't hostile to it. He just couldn't get his head around it. And then he himself, we didn't even say anything, but he himself, after a couple of minutes, he said, I have heard of some churches where people gather together on someone's porch and they do a watch party and they all talk during that. And I've heard that works really well. So now you've got the content and the community at the same time. Right. So in my church, where everything's pre-recorded. And so the pastor will often stop 2 or 3 times during the sermon, and they'll put up some sermon questions on the screen. And then you see a timer going. It's usually a minute and a half or 2 hours. Like, talk amongst yourself, or if you're alone, just jot down in your journal or something like that. And they're very probing questions. Some people respond for everyone to see in the chat. Others might be with their kids at home talking about it. There's always some kids' questions too on our screens. And so it's the sermon and now then a reflection point all coming together. And sometimes that's a private personal thing, sometimes a community thing, and sometimes a small group thing.
Yeah.
So I think it all comes together there.
Yeah.
Good idea.
The way it's the basic premise that people come to know yourself and you have real personal transformation, reordering of your heart, soul, and mind, not just through introspection, but through dialogue, through this actual learning together and I think that, we could get into so many Barna statistics that have come out in their latest, hottest report on hybrid ministry, but, digital viewership is decreasing rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And you could look at it from many different angles, but, we have the theory that one of the main reasons is because it's a little bit like how we think about Netflix now. Like, if Netflix stopped putting out any new content on their platform, their viewership would stop growing because they require to keep attention constantly. And I see pastors struggling with this too, of like, how do we keep attention? One option is more and more and more content, which in and of itself is not bad. But on its own, you still haven't hit the core problem that people are feeling, which is, what do I do with everything that I'm ingesting? It's like swallowing without chewing. There
was a Barna thing that Steph and I were talking about today. We love the Barna statistics. There's just so much good stuff there. That church people who in the last, they're asked in the last month, have you been to church online and or in person? And half of them, almost half, said, no, I have not. And then later in the same question, it's like, have you watched online church? And they said, yeah, I watched online church last week. So for them, they've watched online church, but they don't feel that they've been to church.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was something else. So they got the sermon, they got the worship, they got the announcements. There was something else lacking. They don't now. Barna doesn't say, and those people didn't say, I missed the people, but that's what we think the answer is.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Stephanie, do you have any other thoughts there?
It's, I think, again, it's, I empathize deeply with churches that have kind of gotten thrown into this loop of it, the ways that we used to define engagement are so different in online. And what we have found is when left, churches have thought a lot about what real engagement and personal life transformation means in person. And now online, some of those same things translate, but the online world has other statistics too. And I see this pivotal moment where churches have an opportunity to go beyond just defining engagement as views, shares, likes, and comments, which are one measure of engagement, but to really think beyond that into engagement in terms of two-way dialogue, in terms of, interaction that people are having, in terms of, questions that are being asked. I mean, I love it when pastors are actually really engaging. Like Andy said, there are people in this question back and forth, because it's really helping people actually go the step further than just listening to actually, embodying and then hopefully doing, which is the cycle that we hope to see in real true engagement.
So I was saying this way early, and I'm a video guy. I love great content, and I love really good worship experiences, and I love spending time making those great. But one thing I said earlier is, especially when COVID first hit, get online and get online fast. It doesn't matter how it looks. Like, just get on with your iPhone or whatever and get out there. So do you guys have any thoughts about that, and also maybe participation, the idea of engagement and participating, interacting over the production quality? Andy, do you have any thoughts on that?
We've heard a lot of people having pretty good success with Zoom, which usually means very low production value, right? It's just everyone in their living room, and usually even sometimes the pastors at the church, but sometimes in an office or study or something like that. So not very high production value, and they like that. They do struggle with, to think that, Zoom wasn't made for church, and so you got 30 people and you're competing with the mute, unmute, and if it's some populations, just are tougher with that. So there's just some things around the quality of that gets a little teeth grinding, but they're very happy with that. And so when we meet with them, we're like, okay, what do you want to take from that, and what do you want to leave behind? I do think for a newcomer that the high production value is probably going to be more important. Like their first step isn't going to be a Zoom. They're not going to jump into a Zoom with 30 people
that they don't know.
They're going to watch online. And if it's clunky, I think that can be a stumbling block for a newcomer. So I'm not answering your question directly. I'm voting on both sides of the.
No, I'm with you. I think that, when COVID first started, that was my view, is get on. But at some point, there's got to be a 2.0. There's got to be a 3.0. You got to keep, moving and getting better and increasing your production quality.
What you recommend, and one of the things you posted was, each week or maybe each month, try to do one thing. Like get a different, get a second camera, or remember to call out to the people online by name or something like that.
Right,
just
exactly.
One thing that's different, just incrementally keep it moving.
Right, exactly right. Okay, Stephanie, let's talk about some situations where the hybrid model is really going to work and hit people that would not necessarily get to come to a physical location, or we're ministering to people that might not be ministered to. Can you talk to me about some stories?
Oh, we have so many, and Andy and I both do. And as we define hybrid, a hybrid very much is an investment in the church in both the in-person, but equally as much in the online. That online is not just some views online, but they're real full people behind a screen that you're intentionally trying to bring together in a community, even if that community remains solely online. So as we think about, and then there's the second definition of hybrid, which is then you are actually trying to bring those two communities together in the same space or at the same time, or in some way that you can create more of a community feel. And churches of different sizes are finding how hybrid's going to work for them. If you're a church of under 100, the ability to bring together those two online communities is a little easier than if you're a church of 1,000 plus, where you might already naturally be breaking down your congregation into small groups and encouraging those smaller groups to form. Mm-hmm. But hybrid has certainly opened doors for people with disabilities. We've heard a lot of amazing stories about people who who are parents of children with disabilities. Who this story particularly comes out of the UK, a family who has two children, both with different types of disabilities, that tends to, when they're in person, lead to unexpected noises and sounds and things that are not usual in a quiet church environment. And so, Mother's personal reflection was, I love going to church, but I'm always so anxious that my children are causing disruption. Sometimes I'm embarrassed. Sometimes I'm annoyed myself. And I don't always know how to react. She said one of the things that online church has done for her is this ability to press the mute button. Like that mute button is suddenly this saving grace for her of my kids can have an active role. And this church in particular has a model very much like what Altar helps churches do, where they bring people in from home in person and vice versa, and create spaces where they can do breakout groups online more easily than what Zoom does. And her kids participate in that. They get engaged, and they now can have a voice back and feel like they're participating. The second story that comes to mind is the UK is an amazing place. We work a lot in the UK as well, and the churches there are at different stages than churches in the US. But another church in the UK that a wife has been going to church for 20 years, never attended with her. And when their church went online, they started the pre-recording, and she would record herself reading scripture or giving announcements or prayer requests every week. And she would struggle to get the phone exactly right on a stand. And her husband saw her struggling and was like, you know what, let me just help you. Let me hold it for you. So he would hold the phone. And after a few weeks, he'd be like, you know what, can I read scripture this week? I really want to try this out myself. And so he started reading the scripture each week. And then he's like, I kind of want to watch us. What does it look like in the church service? And then they would sit down and watch church together. And after a while, this guy who's not attended church in 20 years is suddenly a part of this community, hopping on the Zoom classes, meeting people, engaging, and all because he was given a role. And I think this is what hybrid ministry is about. It's about more than just how do you capture views online, but go beyond to that into how do you engage those views, and how do you give them participation in the community, a sense of ownership and a sense of agency, that they are able to make real connections, and that this belongs to them, not just to the pastor who creates content.
Yeah, we find that a church that has a very big emphasis on passing of the peace, where everyone, I guess, could shout out, peace with you, everybody. But if they can make a direct connection with someone, so that seems to be, culturally, some churches, put more emphasis on that. Another one is if they have corporate prayer, where it's sort of popcorn prayer. Well, if there's people at home and people in the church, they have people in the church, they might go up to a microphone or loudly enough with a mask on to have their prayer heard. And then there's someone, who's basically, running the mute button or whatever, but you can do this with Altar, is like, okay, I see Stephanie has kind of indicated she has something. And so, all right, Stephanie, you're next. And then he pushes the button, she pushes the button, and now she can offer it. And then it can be heard in the church as well. So if that's an important part of the liturgy or of the flow of the Sunday morning, that we find that's a really important part for hybrid.
I think that's a huge piece that you guys provide is the integration of the digital into the physical, and vice versa. But that's a big key that whether that's scripture reading or somebody doing announcements or a testimony or a story or updates or whatever, we can bring those people into the physical environment. And share and be a part of the worship experience that way. A couple others that I wrote down that we have talked about a little bit is the shut-in. Obviously, the elderly, they can be more involved. And then you mentioned a little bit the unchurched spouse or your other family members that are watching. And then the introvert, Andy, you mentioned that where the lady had gotten real involved in the chat. And yeah, some people really thrive in that physical environment, and some people thrive more, on the keyboard. So that's awesome. We mentioned Barna earlier. Andy, I'd love for you to talk about maybe some of the Barna research that you guys have really resonated with, especially as it relates to hybrid. What are some things that you guys are hearing and finding?
Yeah, so Stephanie already alluded to some of them. Online viewership went skyrocketed in April, and it is down now. It's actually down below pre-COVID levels, right? For some churches,
in-person attendance levels.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Do you think
So
that's because most churches are opening back and more people are going, or is the research showing, and I think it is, that physical attendance is down as well?
physical attendance down. So when you add it up, so we had that big spike for online, and people were seeing, 2x, 5x, 10x viewership. It was amazing, right? And then, a lot of it was just, maybe that, then watch for 10 seconds, something like that. But even that is good. You have someone visit your church for 10 seconds. And now the total number of attendance, including online and in the church, that is down. I think I saw the number is 14% or something like that. So that's really distressing. We think that we fit in what we're doing will help bring that up. And we have debates all the time internally around, well, what are we doing? Are we helping keep the insider people in, like not the inside the church, but like your current congregation? Yes, we're, because you're losing some of them. Well, are we trying to get newcomers? Like this whole thing of newcomers? Like, yes, you're trying to get newcomers too. So I think, I don't know, I'm optimistic. I think there will be a resurgence. I think as churches figure out what do people come for in the first place, and why do they stay? Let's get those things. And so I think hybrid. I don't know if I answered your question, because you asked a lot about Barna.
Well, the stat I'll throw in there just to illustrate what Andy's saying too from Barna is we see a few things. We see, one, people still prefer physical. The majority of adults prefer physical over digital, with the exception of millennials, who it's an equal split. It's, they are saying, I could do either and it would be just as meaningful and valuable to my life. That's really important for churches to know. Secondly, there's digital weariness. Like Andy said, there is a decrease in viewership, and we alluded to it earlier. You could look at it from so many different angles of, just our general context of the U.S. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Screen fatigue.
Yeah, but then there's also screen fatigue. And then the last one is, which I think is actually the most interesting part of the Barna study, which is this question they ask is, can online church be more than just sermons? Most church-going adults report that their church really only offers their sermons online. So when you look at, decrease in viewership, if all that you have online is your sermon, of course, just like my Netflix analogy, of course, people are going to stop watching after a while, because it's like it's ingesting without actually getting to do that thing that kept you coming back week after week, which is people, which is taking the truth that you hear in a sermon, but then living it out in your life, and living it out in relationship with each other. So I think that is where really this, online and hybrid ministry for churches needs to start moving, is looking beyond the engagement of just numbers and statistics to how do we define engagement as something broader, and then choose technology in that way.
Well, let's get in a time machine and let's jump 2 or 3 years from now. Do you think that hybrid? I still think that hybrid brings some great benefits, and the people that we mentioned. I mean, you're going to have shut-ins. You're going to, whether they're not in church because of a global virus or not.
Right.
You're still going to have people maybe in the hospital or nursing home or shut in some way. You're still going to have missionaries. You're still going to have people on vacation. You're still going to have
that's an
snowbird. Right. Yeah. You're still going to have those people.
Yeah.
And this, if you have a model in place that can reach those people, they can still be heavily involved in your church each week, and not have to be physical. Stephanie, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's how do we, I think it's a big mental shift we're making, that, we used to think live stream was kind of like the billboard sign that would help people come into the physical building. But what we're seeing now, I think, is the new model of churches. You can be equally a part of a church, whether you're online or in person, and as you fluctuate between the two. That it's not it doesn't have to be a compromise of one or the other.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we're going to see churches getting really, we're the technologists. We're going to build those platforms that allow churches to really build an online community that's amazing and gives them dynamic features that they can really do those in-person things online as well. But I'm excited to see how churches get creative with it, of how we develop community online and really bring life back into that space.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of a bell curve. We talked to a church out in Palo Alto. They have increased their attendance throughout the pandemic. So they have, I forget what the percentage is, but let's say it's 25% of their church is online attendance. And new people, they had not been part of the church before. And now they're preparing to go back into the church. And everyone is saying like, well, wait, what about Mauricio in Miami, who's 3,000 miles away, but he's part of our church now.
Right.
So they are building their concept of what their church is, that includes that only online, that have never been in the church and may only visit once, over the course of 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
That was one.
Yeah.
And then there was a Presbyterian church here in Boston where same thing, it's exactly the same dynamic. And that pastor there, she was telling us how they're trying now they're looking at their elder board and making sure that there's at least one person who is from the online portion of their community who is on the elder board. That I never heard that one before. That hadn't even occurred to me. So there are going to be a lot of things like that are going to change the nature of it. And they'll just bring the interests of that, like, we need to remember to think of, churches that are pursuing diversity, online is part of their diversity now.
Right. Good point. Yeah, we saw a lot of pastors that were very surprised with some of them were either a little bit older or just not up with the technology as much, that were surprised with the amount of audience they saw online. Wow, I have 200 people in my room, but I have 1,000 people watching online. This is incredible. And that's fluctuated and gone down, up and down over the last few months. But still, it's the question to them of, okay, well, if you have 1,000 people coming to your church now, and you can see from the stats that 200 of them are local and 800 of them are not local, what is your plan to minister to those 800 people and still be involved in your church? You're obviously not going to shut down your online. So be thinking, Pastor, how can I continue to minister to them? All right. As we land today, tell me a little bit more about the features of Altar. So if I'm thinking about moving that direction and using your platform for my church, what are some of the features that are really good that I need to consider?
Yeah, that's easy question to answer for us. So Carl, we offer two platforms. We have our first, our Altar Live engagement platform. This is a platform that we've specifically designed for the church that has already invested in their live stream system, the technology that they have. They've been up and running. Maybe they've been using YouTube or Facebook or Vimeo. What we do is we essentially take their stream and their stream key and we host it on our site. And we handle the engagement all around. If they're using the Altar engagement platform, that means they have, lobbies before the service starts where people can start joining. You can see who's at church today. You have a hospitality team that can start welcoming people. Then once the church, and the other thing you can do before church starts is you can pick your seat. So you can actually start forming, you can choose to watch church alone, or you can watch with other people. You form watch parties. So you can watch a service while it's going on. You can talk with other people. If the pastor does put up reflection questions, you now have other people. If you're all alone.
So I can choose to be in that community Zoom where I can talk to other people or not, right?
You can choose one or the other. And people have different preferences. Some people come into church just like in real life. And they're there, they've had a hard week and they're there to worship. They're there to be with God. And they are ready to, they don't need to have that they're waiting for the coffee hour maybe to do that. Yeah. But then you have other people who, they really learn by like digesting together and talking to somebody else about it and reflecting on those questions or worshiping or praying together in that way. So we offer both abilities. So you can join watch parties by choosing your seat or inviting other people to sit with you. A great feature as well, if you're inviting first-time visitors, if you've invited somebody, nothing is worse than just getting a link and being like, oh, this is interesting. But what if you could actually, watch with the person that you've invited and actually, walk them through the experience? Secondly, once the event actually is live, we have Q&A, engagement, opportunities that people can really be on their keyboard online and actually participating in that two-way way. And then lastly, the coolest part that we're excited about, one of the coolest, is the ability to recreate a church's virtual cafe or lobby. So this is, imagine a screen full of tables where you can see who's seated where, and you can click on any seat and join a pop-out video conference session with those people. You can say hi to your friends. You can leave, go say hi to somebody else. You can really get that two-way. You can have one-on-one video conference breakouts or group ones together. It gives you ability to go that level further. You could imagine.
Great place for the welcome team to.
Yeah.
Someone who hasn't joined a group, but they're like, well, I'm here for the first time. I'm like, well, let me introduce you to Carl. He's a great guy. And
good.
Sit at that table.
Yeah. So that's all of our Altar engagement platform. I mean, many features are going to come. We are a product born out of COVID, and we're learning and developing alongside church partners as we really learn what are the pain points and challenges for churches, and what are opportunities that they've discovered along the way. How do we build those into features for them? And then the second piece that we offer that we've alluded to throughout this conversation as well is the Altar producer side. This is for churches that don't have a current setup, or they've been using maybe something like Zoom, or they've been doing just a phone and they've been streaming to Facebook or Live or YouTube, and they want to go that step further, keep it really simple, designed for the volunteer staff. So our Altar producer side is all the back end. It keeps using the Altar engagement side with a few different features, but that's the ability to actually create that two-way interaction in a service where you can really pull people in from home, push them live, and manage all user controls.
Do I still need a live streaming provider, or are you guys that also?
If you're using, it's up to the church depending on what they do. Our Altar engagement platform basically takes a stream key. So it's, you still need, if you're not using the Altar producer side and you're just bringing what you have to the table, you still need your own streaming provider, or you can switch it out with our Altar producer side.
Okay, so the Altar producer side. So let's say I'm using a Resi or a Boxcast or something. With the producer side, that would go away.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
End to end. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you would replace a Resi or another streaming provider, and the other you would not.
No.
You would still need a streaming provider.
Yeah, and because each church is different. We really, churches, most people break down churches, if you're under 70, if you're 70 to 300, or if you're, we live in New England where a big church is a 300 member church. I know a lot of the US, it's, 1,000 and up is, considered medium size to large size. So, we recognize that each church has different setups. So we try to really be flexible based on what they're bringing to the table, what they need. Good.
Well, tell us your website and how we can get started.
Yeah, you can find us at altarlive.com, all one word. Altar is spelled with an A. We're live there. You can check out our product, look at our features. You can get started right there. So you're able to sign up a community and start testing out some of our basic features there. And our team is happy to work with you. We work with churches. Andy and I just were in Connecticut yesterday working with a church that is starting from scratch. So we work with everybody starting from scratch all the way up to churches that really have a robust system in place already. So we're happy to talk and see what will fit best for a church.
Good. Well, thank you guys for what you're doing. I'm so glad that you came to the market, and that not that COVID is a wonderful thing, but I'm glad that it produced guys like you to come out with such great technology for the church. And so thank you for what you're doing for the kingdom, and really appreciate your time today, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carl. Great.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick minute to tell you about my brand new book that I co-wrote with my friend Luke McElroy from SALT Conferences. Several years ago, I put together a production dictionary for folks that served inside the church media and production space. Well, Luke and I expanded that idea and have added several hundred new terms and definitions. So this new edition is over 600 terms in an easy-to-reference dictionary for those who serve in the production, creative, and technical areas of live environments, filmmaking, worship experiences, and more. It also includes a connector guide with over 40 unique connectors categorized by type. You can pick up a copy today in our bookstore at 1230.media/books. That's 1230.media/books.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Well, guys, thanks so much for hanging out on this bonus episode of the podcast. We love you guys. Continue to create amazing worship experiences at your church each and every weekend. I'll catch you next time.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.